Welcome everyone to the fourth episode of the Become Your Own Therapist podcast. Today I'm delighted to have Professor Paul Gilbert, OBE, who is a professor of clinical psychology at the University of Derby and honorary visiting professor at the University of Queensland. Until his retirement from the NHS, which is the National Health Services in the UK, in 2016, he was a consultant clinical psychologist for over 40 years. He's researched evolutionary approaches to psychopathology with a special focus on mood, shame, and self-criticism. With various mental health difficulties, and he also developed compassion-focused therapy. He was made a fellow of the British Psychological Society in 1993, president of the BABCP from 2002 to 2004, and was a member of the first British government's NICE guidelines for depression. He has written and edited 21 books and over 250 papers and book chapters. In 2006, he established the Compassionate Mind Foundation as an international charity with the mission statement to promote well-being through the scientific understanding and application of compassion. And you can find that at compassionatemind.co.uk. There are now a number of sister foundations in other countries. He was awarded an OBE by the Queen in March 2011 for services to mental health. He established and is the director of the Center for Compassion Research and Training at Derby University in the UK. And he has written and edited many books on compassion, his latest book being Living Like Crazy. So I'm delighted to have Paul with us. Paul, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that very long introduction.
Yeah, great. So you've got a lot to live up to now in the next 30 to 40 minutes. Great. So I want to start with maybe introducing, because my audience is the lay public, just introducing them to the therapy that you've developed over these many years.
Oh, so you want me to say that? But okay. So how did we come to compassion-focused therapy then? Well, there are about four different strands to it. The first strand was that one of the dominant psychotherapies in the 80s and 90s, and even today really, is called cognitive behavior therapy. And in cognitive therapy, you try to help people look at the way in which they're thinking about their problems. So when people are depressed, they often have depressive thoughts like, I'm a failure, the world is hopeless, and nobody's going to help me. And so what you do is you help people stand back from their thoughts and think if they can think of alternatives. What's the evidence for that? If they had a friend, what would they advise a friend? So cognitive therapy was very much about helping people understand they can get caught up in a loop of thinking, which affects their feeling. As they become more depressed, they feel more negative, get more depressed. They get caught up in loops. So I was doing that and helping people look at their thoughts can be really quite useful. However, we also know that some people really don't change very much, even if they change their thoughts. And so my area that I worked with was severe and chronic depression. And I had a lady who had had many suicide attempts and was in and out of hospital, very depressed. And but she'd been adopted and she'd had a very difficult early life. And also, but on the other hand, she had made a good marriage. She had a good relationship with her husband, had 3 lovely children, and who were doing very well. So we were doing this cognitive approach where you kind of say, oh, I feel failure, I feel unlovable. And then you stand back and say, yes, but on the other hand, I've held down a job, I've got friends and so on. My husband loves me, I know he does. He stood by me all these years. And, but yes, I think it's true, but it doesn't really affect how I feel. So I asked her to speak out her thoughts. Can you speak them out as you hear them in your mind, you know? And she was a bit embarrassed, but she said, okay. And this is what she said. Come on, you're having cognitive therapy, aren't you? You got a husband who loves you, for God's sakes. You got children who care about you. So what I discovered was the emotional tone of the thinking was very hostile, very contemptuous. The actual emotion, the feeling for the self was very, very hostile. So the obvious solution to that was to teach people to create a warm tone, a helpful tone, a friendly tone, supportive tone to your thinking. Because if you've got someone beating you up inside your own head, then you've got a problem, because you can't get away from that, can you really? So the first thing was then to help this person begin to generate a kind of warmer tone to her thinking. And she said, no, I'm not doing that. No. Oh, that's not going to help me. I can't think that just being supportive and compassionate to myself will help me. No, I'm not doing it. So that was the second shock. The first shock was the hostility in the thinking. The third shock was the client didn't want to do it. She thought it was weak and not very helpful. And the fourth shock, or my third shock, was that when clients do start to do it, they run into quite a number of problems. You know, if you think starting to be compassionate is going to be easy, it is not. Okay. Now, one of the reasons for this is because your memory systems are rooted in different motives and emotions. So, for example, supposing you like going on holidays, you like holidays, and you look forward to holidays. So you've got an explorative system or going on holiday system, which is full of positive emotion. It's great, isn't it? But then one year you go on holiday and you get badly beaten up, put in hospital, and have to be flown home. That's going to make it very traumatic. What happens the next time you see something on the television reminding you of holidays? Do you remember all the wonderful times, or do you suddenly have a trauma reaction? Okay, so what was very positive, it should be very positive, has become toxic because you've got trauma in that system. It's the same with the caring system, right? So if you in your life have had problems of abuse or criticism from parents or neglect or whatever it is, or being bullied at school, when you start to work the caring system, the connecting system, actually you don't necessarily have good feelings. Isn't this wonderful? Actually, you start to feel angry or anxious or very sad. And this is what happened to this particular lady, that when she began to start compassion, she didn't want to do it, partly because when she did it, she started to feel overwhelming sadness and grieving for the life that she'd had, for the biological mother that hadn't been there for her, for the loneliness of her childhood. So that's an issue, right? So as a therapist, you have to clean the system, you have to detoxify it, you have to clean it, work with the traumas in the caring system. And so compassion-focused therapy isn't just about teaching people to be compassionate and kind to themselves, it's also teaching people to work with the trauma to their experiences of being cared for or not being cared for. Mm-hmm. So that's how we began, really, of trying to recognizing that people have a lot of hostility to themselves. When you move them towards being compassionate, they have a lot of resistance to it. And part of the reason for that is because when they begin to become compassionate and kind to themselves, it just stimulates all these memories about other people who should have been kind to them and weren't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great, thanks for that useful summary. And I think from that, what I'm wondering is, I see how it started with the self-talk and then noticing the emotional tone of the self-talk, and this is now developed into a whole, I guess you could say, psychotherapy. And I know you think of it as a scientific and evolutionary-based approach rather than a specific modality. But I'm wondering, over the years, this what started off as just a conversation and just as one research study that has fully developed into this therapy. What is it, do you think, about compassion that is so central to the human condition? Why do you think compassion itself has become so central to your way of thinking?
Okay, well, I'm an evolutionary psychologist, as you said, even. And the key thing is to understand that your brain has a lot of algorithms, okay? Let me put it this way first. If the audience are listening, I can say to anyone out there, how many of you chose to have 2 arms and 2 legs? Anybody? No. How many of you chose your ethnicity? No. How many of you chose to be a man or a woman? It's a little more difficult these days, perhaps, but not really, no. How many of you chose to have a brain that is capable of anxiety and depression and rage and violence and hatred and love? How many chose to have a brain that could do all that stuff? Nobody. So the first thing is to realize then that we have bodies and brains that have been built for us, not by us. We didn't build them. We didn't decide that we would have all these different emotions and difficulties. And most of the things that cause us mental pain, we don't choose. No one wakes up in the morning to think, you know what, I think I'll be depressed today. That'll be, or I think I'll have some panic attacks. I'm bored, I'm going to practice having panic attacks. I'm going to go on a course to have panic attacks. That'd be great, wouldn't it, really? So these things, the pains of the mind, the things that cause you pain and cause you suffering, you don't choose. Now, people say, oh, yeah, but I made mistakes. I should have done this and I should have done that. Well, okay, you can think about it that way. But the first point is to realize that it's not your fault. The way your brain is set up is not your fault. And also to realize that, unfortunately, humans can be pretty bad to themselves. And of course, they can be very bad to others. We know that humans are a potentially very nasty species. It's difficult for us to come to terms with it, but it's true. If you look at our history of the Roman games and the Holocaust and slavery and all the horrible things that humans have done to each other, it's just shocking, isn't it, really? So we have a mind that has the capacity for great harm. There's no question about that. Compassion is not about being soft, and it's really about the courage to see the dark side, and also to do great harm to oneself, through being self-critical or self-hating or whatever. And so the key thing then is to recognize, so how can we change our brains? How can we change our minds? Well, it turns out that the way you think about things and what you focus on will change your brain. And this is quite easy to show you. Look, if you're laying in bed one night and you're thinking about an argument that you've had with somebody and how you're going to get your own back tomorrow, what you're doing is you're releasing a lot of chemicals in your brain and in your body. Your blood pressure will be going up, your heart rate will be going up, blah, 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 blah. But if you're laying in bed and you're having a sexual fantasy, you've got a totally different system of chemicals in your brain, very different processes going on in your brain. And if you're laying in your bed practicing compassion, you're going to have a totally different system of chemicals in your brain. Stimulating your body will be changed in a different way. So we can learn to focus on practices that change the way the brain works. Okay, so if you practice on a regular basis compassion, you will actually be turning on systems in your brain that will down-regulate the dark side of your mind. It'll down-regulate your tendencies towards depression and anxiety. It can take time. It's called neuroplasticity. We now know that the things that we practice actually change the chemistry and the physiology of our brain. What happens when you get depressed is that you get stuck in a loop. You can't get out. So you feel depressed, you think depressed, you feel depressed. So basically, you're constantly generating the same systems in your brain over and over and over and over again. So what we do then when we train our mind, we notice, we become mindful, we notice, oh, look, I'm feeling very depressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately practice a compassion practice, which I can talk to you about in a moment. I'm going to deliberately practice because that will change my brain. Now, it's not magic. It's not going to do it like that. It's like going to the gym. Going to the gym one Wednesday is not going to make you super fit. But if you go 2 or 3 times a week for about a month, then you will be a lot fitter. So it's the same with your brain. It's not going to be quick, but if you practice this shifting to a genuine, compassionate, supportive, understanding orientation, then over time you will feel better.
Great. So I'm hearing a lot of the value in compassion. It sort of has a generalized effect because you mentioned depression, anger, anxiety. I'm hearing that compassion can be really powerful in reorganizing the mind in a way that makes it almost a bit more resilient to those negative things. Okay, great.
So you could say the other question is the fact that, look, so you could change your thoughts. That's all true as well. But the thing about compassion is it's linked to the caring motivational system. Now, the caring motivational system is hundreds and hundreds of millions of years old. Most mammals care for their offspring. So evolution has created brains that are capable of being sensitive to the needs and distress of their offspring and then do something about it. That's basically what mothers do with their offspring, isn't it? You know, they hear the cry of the baby and then they go and pick the baby up and stroke it or whatever. And we know that motivation to be caring, when it evolved with hormones such as oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that evolved with caring behavior. We know that there is part of your autonomic nervous system, which is the nerves that control your various parts of your body, called the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve also evolved with caring behavior. So caring behavior over millions of years has come with a particular set of brain processes and body processes. So it's not just let's be kind to ourselves. You're actually deliberately stimulating these basic systems in your brain. That's what you're doing because evolution has wired them in for you. So whereas when you do, if you just do thought changing, that's good, that's great, but you're not stimulating any particular system. Whereas we want to stimulate a particular system that's biologically designed to downregulate threat. So when the child is distressed and goes to the mother picks them up, no, there we are, blah, 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 calms the child down because the mother is giving the child's brain an input that will stimulate those systems. So that's why it's important, because we want to stimulate an evolved biological system.
Okay, great. So I mean, the question then that arises for me is then in distributing compassion-focused therapy and helping people think in this way and activating that mammalian caregiving system. Are you in a way, I mean, if we thought quite idealistically here, are you in a way stimulating, creating a world where people treat each other as though they are a relative to be cared for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. The first thing, right, is the courage to realize that humans are potentially a very unpleasant species. If we don't start there and to understand that all of us have the potential to be quite harmful. We can lose our temper, we can say harmful things, we can vote for harmful political parties, we can join harmful movements, we can do all kinds of stuff, really, can't we? So the first thing is the desire to live to be helpful, not harmful. And that's the issue, recognizing that we didn't choose this, but we have to take responsibility for our minds as best we can so that we're not harmful, okay? Because it's very easy for us to be harmful. That has to be a decision that's really quite central. That's what we're trying to bring into the world. So we're working with businesses, for example, so the businesses will have the motto that they want to make money. Of course they do, but not in a way that is harmful to their communities, harmful to the environment, and harmful to their workers. Now, if you have that one idea that, okay, because it's easy for us to do all of those things, isn't it? We can be harmful to the community, we can be harmful to the economy with ecology, environment, without really realizing. So, but we're going to practice this. And in schools, you know, if you're training kids, right, teaching them compassion, that actually we have very difficult brains, our brains are very tricky, like, you know, but we can train them to live to be helpful, not harmful. Okay. It's like when you drive on the motorway, you train yourself to drive, so you drive helpfully, safely, not harmfully. You can drive harmfully if you drink too much or whatever it is, take too many risks, you can do that and then you run into trouble, but you can train your mind how to drive safely. We can train our minds how to drive our minds helpfully, not harmfully, but they do need training. I mean, some individuals are much more naturally compassionate than others. Some individuals come from loving backgrounds and are much more compassionate than others, but we do need to train our minds.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that sounds, I see so much potential in that for creating social cohesion and also helping internally on an individual level. This feels very scalable. So I want to ask, I want to get into the, you know, what people can do or what resources they can look into or practices they can look into. But before I get there, I just want to address one sort of common block that I've seen in my own practice to work like this, which is people often saying things like, I don't care about being helpful or whatever else. I just want to be successful in my own life, or I want to, I don't have time for compassion. Basically, compassion is just going to slow me down. It's too fluffy. I just want to focus on functioning better, or what people who say that, are they missing something about compassion?
No, they can do that if they want. It's fine. It's a free
Okay.
world. But the point is, you say to them, so, but why? What do you want? Let's suppose you're successful. You make millions of pounds. What is it you're wanting? So you've got it. What do you want? What do you want? And of course, eventually they say, I want to be happy. You say, oh, okay, so you want to be happy. So all of this really is because you think it will make you happy. Yeah? Is that right? That's what you want it for. Okay. Well, let's have a think about this. Okay. And also people say, if you had all this stuff, but you were on a desert island, you had the most wonderful house, a wonderful swimming pool, would that be okay? And usually they say, no, you need, oh, I see. So, okay, let's have a look at this. And so you want all this money, but actually what you're really wanting is to be happy. And you don't really want to be happy by yourself. I mean, you can be, I suppose, but just living alone. Some people like to do that, don't they? But not really. So you would like to have, so how would you like people to be with you? Would you like them to hate you or to like you? And so what you do is you begin to pull it apart, because basically what people are looking for is a happy and meaningful life. And so they confuse excitement and dopamine rush with happiness. But the point about that is that dopamine rush, wealth and so forth, will only last you so long. It's like eating a chocolate cake, it's great. Oh, I love chocolate cake. And then you eat it, and actually you want another one, or you don't want another one, or whatever. So the ways of happiness, which is about achieving and doing and getting on in the world, that's okay. That'll give you a certain type of excitement, a certain type of joy, but it doesn't last, and you can't guarantee it will make you happy in the long run, and you can't guarantee that you will have supportive relationships around you unless you work on those relationships. So it's really helping people understand what they mean by what is it they're really searching for. Because we live in neoliberal societies, which everybody's, we're all being told that happiness is, you need to succeed and achieve, and then you can buy lots of things because capitalism wants you to buy lots of things. And oh yeah, okay, great. I feel so much better if I have a better car and a better house. And I think there is a degree that's true, but what really gives you happiness is meaning in your life and social connections. When you feel loved and valued, that is genuine happiness. That is genuine happiness, not the material struggles.
Yeah. And I see how compassion slots in there, feeling loved and valued. Yeah.
Yeah. So be successful. That's important. That can be an aspect of your life. It's all about balance, isn't it? That's balance. But the problem comes when you say, I only want to do that. I don't care about compassion. I don't want to be helpful. Why should I be helpful to anyone? I don't do that. That's the problem. Now you're out of balance. So yes, be successful and achieve and try and be at your best and get a good job and have a nice life. But you don't have to do that at the expense of compassion. You can do that with compassion. You can bring people with you. So if you're succeeding and achieving, you can show other people how to do it. I mean, in a way, sport is a great example of this, right? Because what happens if you look at sport, the idea of sport is to be your best and it's very competitive, but people love the game. It's all about the game. So you'll see that coaches, say a South African coach will come and coach, be a British coach, because they love the game. They want to improve everybody. We want to improve everybody's skills, right? So it's competitive, but it's also about, let's see if we can all improve and so on and so on. So I think there are ways in which we can see the desire to get on in the world and so on. That's fine, that's okay, but not at the expense of other people, not harming other people, and also bringing other people with you, taking the joys of helping them too. Okay, so your achievement doesn't have to just be yours. It can actually be something that you do that brings you great pleasure. Like, there's been a lot of discussions with the scientists that developed the vaccines. So they're very competitive. They want to get on and want to, be professors and everything, but also great joy from developing a vaccine that's going to stop people getting sick. So you can have, it's about balancing That's the key thing, balancing these things, not one or the other.
Okay, great. Yeah, that answers my concern, and I'm going to put that into my toolkit. So you, what is compassion focused therapy? Does it have to be in the psychotherapy format? Do you need a therapist with you to do these things, or is there something about the knowledge and wisdom and practices that you've generated over the years that is tractable if one does not have access to therapy or cannot see a
Yes, very
therapist?
much. It's a great question, Eve. Yes, there are all kinds of trainings now that you can do, and there's a lot of personal training. So there are two things called compassion focused therapy, and then there's also what is called compassionate mind training. So there's a series of trainings that anybody can do and go on the website or read the books. And it's not just mine. I mean, there are many books on meditation and compassion training. Now there's lots of things you can read. So yeah, there are things that you can practice yourself. So on our website, we have a lot of exercises that people can practice themselves, just go and practice.
Okay, great. I'll ask you about that a bit closer to the end, because I'm gonna link in the description, links to your website and where they can get these trainings and things like that. But before we get there, I just wanted to ask you if you'd mind maybe mentioning a technique that you think is quite a useful entry point. It doesn't have to be the biggest or the best, but just something that, for the audience who are listening and are curious about this, what sort of practices or techniques does compassionate mind training offer, and how can they get into it?
Okay, so one of the key things is I'm a brain state theorist. My first book was called From Psychology to Brain State. Depression was on depression from psychology to brain state, which has actually just been re-released. It was published in 1994, just being re-released. Brain state theory. What does that mean? It means that at any point in time, right now, me and you, our brains are in a certain position, right? And so that might be okay, you might be happy for them to be there, but you might also want to change them, okay? And we do it all the time, don't we? We go to parties and we organize to go on holidays. Why? Because we want to change our brain. We want to have different experiences, okay? So brain state switching is really quite important. So here's an exercise that anybody can do. Take a little life difficulty, nothing too major, okay? So a little life difficulty that's maybe making you a bit frustrated or a bit anxious about, okay? And just sit and think about that difficulty for maybe 2 minutes. Just notice what you're going to do and how you feel about it, and just be like that. And then come out of it and develop a slow breathing, which will stimulate your vagus. So just breathe slower, and I can show you how to do this a little later, but about 4 breaths per minute. So you're breathing in for 5 seconds, holding, and breathing out for 5 seconds. Nice deep breathing, deep breathing for about 4 breaths per minute, about that. We do that for a couple of minutes, and then feel yourself just slowing down and grounding. So working your body, and then think about yourself as if you're the wisest, most courageous, compassionate person. You at your very best, you at your compassionate best, and all the qualities that you would have as a compassionate being, how you would love to be with other people, to be able to be supportive and helpful and understanding. So really trying to imagine yourself as that, right? That you are this really compassionate being, like an actor stepping into a role. So there you are, you're breathing in the instrument. And now think about your life difficulty. What wisdom can you bring? What courage can you bring to your life difficulty? And what people often notice when they do that is that when they switch the brain state out of, so they're in the anxiety or the anger, whatever it is, and then they come out of it, they ground and they switch to a compassionate state, they actually see the life difficulty in a slightly different way. Now you can do that for yourself, right? You can do that, you can practice that, just slowing down, taking a breath, really focusing on one's wisdom, remembering we all just found ourselves here, this brain's very tricky, it's not your fault, and just bringing this real desire to be helpful. This is a life difficulty that's tricky, difficult for me, so I want to be helpful and supportive for myself right now. Okay? So you can try that, and that's quite an easy little exercise to have a go at. So the next question is okay, that seems to be helpful. How can I strengthen my compassionate self? How can I so when I switch into my compassionate state, how can I strengthen it? And again, it's a little bit like getting fit, right? For example, supposing you want to sport, one of the things is to play sport, to, you know, I don't know if you like rugby or cricket or whatever, but you want to be fit because that will strengthen your ability to play. So you practice, you do your exercises and you practice, and then you find that your game gets better. So it's the same with compassion. You practice compassion on a regular basis. You practice. So every day, well, not every day, but most days, I try and have a practice where I will sit quietly and just ground myself and to remember that I'm a biological being that's been created. Here I am. I didn't create any of this. I'm a being. I'm a consciousness with inside this being, this biologically created being. And what I need to do is to kind of be aware of what it's doing, what this brain is doing, because it does crazy stuff, so that I can then, as best I can, live to be helpful today. Okay. So that's a little exercise I do, and I smile and I just focus on the desire to be helpful. You know, that's it. And so that's a little practice I do most days, and that seems to be quite useful to me. And then you can do longer practice. You can do meditate, you can do mindfulness, practice mindfulness. That's always extremely helpful, because mindfulness will help you to be aware of where your mind is. It'll help you to become aware that maybe you're getting angry or you're getting anxious or whatever. And that will help you to kind of then make a decision. Okay, do I want to go down that path? Possibly not. So just going to stop, slow down, remembering that I've got this brain, tricky brain, it'll lead me down this path if I let it. So this is very important. I mean, Matthew Ricard says, look, you know, your mind is like water, you know, because basically consciousness is the thing, isn't it? It's what's coming into your consciousness. What is it you are experiencing? You know, are you experiencing anger? Are you experiencing anxiety? Are you experiencing joy? Are you experiencing hunger? What are you experiencing? So it's your conscious experience. It's so important. But consciousness is empty, but it gets filled up with stuff. So, you know, Matthew Ricard, a famous Buddhist monk who was a French interpreter for the Dalai Lama, says, you know, your mind is like water. It can contain a poison or a medicine, but the water is neither. Okay. And what happens for us humans, the most important thing about us is our consciousness, our experience of being. Okay. But experience that consciousness, it's like a screen, it's like a computer screen. Lots of things can come onto it and play on it. And then we think, oh, that's what we are then. You know, I am angry, I am this and that. But you're not, right? You are consciousness. That's the most important thing about you. And that's the thing you should focus on more than anything else. That's the whole point of mindfulness, is to become aware that you are aware, right? And if you think about it, it's the thing that everyone's concerned about. You know, we're worried about when we die. Now, if you said to me, oh, when you die, we will download all your ideas into an artificial intelligence. In heaven, there's these loads of artificial intelligence, and they look and sound just like you, and they think like you. They don't have any consciousness. There's no awareness, and they won't be aware about it. But they're just programs, right? But I don't think you'd be very happy about that. You want to have a conscious experience beyond this. That's what you're interested in. That's what everyone's interested in. So consciousness and the contents of consciousness, and how we allow the contents of our bodies and our brains to take control of our consciousness and our actions. That's the big issue. That is the big issue. And for us to understand that, we have to practice. We have to practice being mindful, and we have to practice intention. My intention while I live on this planet will be to try to be helpful, not harmful, because my biological being is designed to be harmful at times. So that's the thing.
Yeah, and if we do practice this, does it become more automatic in nature, or do you have to put in the same effort every time, you know, as the years go by?
It becomes more it's a little bit like riding a bicycle. It becomes a little bit more automatic, and we take ourselves less seriously. Now, the thing about all of this is, of course, this is great, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, it's also about how people deal with real problems like poverty, you know, like abuse or whatever. So we mustn't be too, what's the word? middle class about these things. We got to realize that, we also want people who are in very difficult circumstances to try as best they can to find a compassionate way of living, even if they're very difficult circumstances. And the funny thing is that even in communities that have a high level of poverty, you often find that people themselves are very compassionate to each other. They try and help each other and support each other. So, the key thing is what can we do in order to help people recognize that all of us are here. None of us chose to be here. None of us, not one person chose to be what they are. We just find our consciousness suddenly finds itself stuck in here. Oh God, here I am. So our job then is to kind of try and work out what's going on. That's a little bit like driving, okay? You learn how to drive. And so when you're mindful, if you're steering into the wrong lane, you just bring yourself back again because you're aware you don't want to be switching the lanes. But the other thing that's quite important is that if you suddenly get hit by a snowstorm, I don't know if you get snowstorms in South Africa, you might do. What do? You learn to slow down. You learn to drive carefully. You realize, hang on a minute, this is a bit dangerous. I've got to be careful at this point. Now, that's how we deal with our minds. We suddenly discover we're having strong emotions, and that triggers us. Hang on a minute, I better slow down here. This is a snowstorm in my mind. I'm getting really angry or something. And if I let it go, if I let this anger run, then I could even become aggressive. So it's like driving, when you get hit by something that's not your fault, it's not your fault you got angry because you've got that system in you, but you need to notice it, because if you let it do its own thing, because it's a biological system, it's millions of years old, you'll see it in animals, you see it in humans. If you let it run you, it will run you, and sometimes it will cause great harm. So you now have a choice. I have a program that's going off in my brain that's making me feel very angry, and now do I want it to be in control of me or not? Because I have a consciousness and I can make that decision. Other animals can't, but I can. So we have to train people to become mindfully aware that once you are aware that a program is running in you, you can decide if you want to let that program do its thing or not. And as you do more compassion, for some of the programs in your mind, you decided, no, you don't want it to run you. You're not going to be a puppet to your genes. You're going to decide, not let that emotion decide for you. No, I'm going to decide. I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm hearing two aspects to it. The one that's important is practicing the mindfulness to step out of that stream of consciousness and to be aware when you're in that stream, to know when you're caught up in it, but then also the intent aspect and practicing, organizing your behaviors and your thoughts around the motive of compassion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. That's brilliantly put. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Paul, there's so much value in, everything you said is so dense, and I feel like I could unpack, there are many doors to go through here, but I'll respect your time and ask where you can direct people for, if they want to take this further.
Yeah, so I think the other thing to say to people, look, is actually the most important part of compassion, because compassion is when we are sensitive to suffering, we see it, and we want to do something about it. We don't want to cause it. We want to do. So that is what compassion is. It's different to kindness. Kindness is about doing nice things for people, remembering your birthday or something. But compassion is really focused about the issue of pain and suffering, because as human beings, that is our lives. All of us will experience pain and suffering, one way or another. All of us, unfortunately, will lose people we love. All of us one day will decay and become diseased and grow old and die. All of us face this, right? Nobody escapes it. Nobody gets out of here alive, as they say. So when we begin to realize that, but also to realize that if we are supportive and compassionate to each other along the way, like medicine, for example, obviously is a wonderful thing that humans have invented. If we are compassionate to others along the way, we can make the journey softer. Okay, so that's such an important thing of actually how we choose to address the issues of suffering. So at the root of it, then, the final point is that it's courage and wisdom. The courage to turn towards pain and suffering, to within oneself, if you've been traumatized or whatever, but also for other people, and a real commitment to try and stop it, to stop suffering, to alleviate it and prevent it if we can, or to set up systems where we alleviate suffering if we can. So this is really, courage and wisdom is very important. So people often say, oh, it's a bit weak, isn't it? No, compassion is the most courageous of all of our motives, and it's the wisest, because, you know, compassion, courage without wisdom can be reckless, and wisdom without courage can be ineffective. You must have both of them, okay? So, you know, if I see somebody fall into a fast flowing river and I think I must save them, I want to really save them, so I jump into the river, but I can't swim and I've got my boots on. Reckless, it's reckless. It's not going to be helpful, is it, right? If I see somebody fall into the river and I can swim and I know how to save them, but I don't want to jump in the river. No, I can't. I'm too frightened. I can't do it. It's ineffective, isn't it? It doesn't matter how good a swimmer I am, how much I know about life saving, I can't do it. So courage and wisdom are at the heart of compassion. And when you practice it, when you train it, that's what you'll find. The courage to stand up against injustice, for example, or whatever it is, and also the wisdom of doing it wisely, not, you know, fiercely or viciously or aggressively or whatever it is. So anyway, I just thought I'd say that because, you know, we always get, oh, compassion is a bit soft. I haven't got, you know, no, it's the most courageous thing. And everybody knows in their heart that if the world really decided, everybody in the world, all politicians decided, we will work to be helpful, not harmful. We will try wherever we can to not create harmfulness in this world. We will recognize the suffering in this world. We will address all of our actions to trying to alleviate it if we can. We will have fun along the way, of course we do. The world will be a very different place, very different place. But if we're competing, I want to be better than you, and I want to make you grade all this crap, that's not going to drive the world. The courage of compassion will change the world. All of this me first stuff won't.
Yeah, I feel quite hopeful, quite inspired, and there's something about even just having this discussion that feels quite centering, grounding in terms of that compassionate motive. I feel different compared to when we first started the interview. Just speaking about this stuff, it's just something I'm noting.
It goes in the brain, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, Nevern, if you look at the last 100 years, we are getting better. In many areas, we are getting better. We are beginning to address, you know, things like racism and all that stuff. We are much better than we were 100 years ago. But where we're not getting better, where we're going backwards, is in politics. And one of the reasons for that is because politics does not pursue competitiveness to promote the best, but to undermine each other. So our political system, and I suspect yours as well, it's competing to show the other side to be stupid and ridiculous, and to feed a right-wing media that loves to see people fight, and then they sell the blood on the carpet, right? That's what they sell. But they like to stir up. They like to stir up anger and fear and stuff. They stir it all up. Those two areas of our lives, our politics and our media, they're not pulling their weight when it comes to compassion. But if you look at the schools, if you look at in the businesses, if you look at humanity, if you look at the way we're treating LGBT and so many things now, women, for example, we're getting better. We're not great, but we're getting better. But there are certain areas where we're not. Now, those areas then do need quite a lot of attention, and we're working with a group called Compassion in Politics. But in general, I think humanity is actually getting better. We are beginning to take mindfulness into schools. We're getting compassion training in schools. We're talking to businesses who actually want to have compassionate business. Unheard of 50 years ago. It's fantastic. Politics and the media, that's not so good. And they're producing populist movements and moving to the right wing and stuff like that, because they breed off fear, you see. They're a parasite. They breed off fear.
And I guess what's ironic about that is that those two areas are the areas that actually give us our information. They're the funnels through which we perceive the other areas. Like we're not in direct contact with schools and businesses and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you look at our health services. I mean, they've been a bit run down by the right wing in this country, but they've also been terrific. So, I think because people can easily look at the television and the politics and so forth and go, oh no, and not notice all the other wonderful things that are going on around the grassroots. The grassroots, I think, yes, you can have tribalism and all that stuff, of course you can, but there's also quite a lot of individuals in the grassroots who are wanting to bring a more compassionate world forward. You think about the growth in vegetarianism, for example. I mean, unheard of 50 years ago. I mean, it was there, but now people are thinking about the cruelty to animals, for example. And it's just beginning to, so these are wonderful signs that people are beginning to think about, actually, I want to be helpful. I don't want to do harmful things, hurtful things.
Yes, yeah, these are wonderful markers. I mean, personally, I'm also vegetarian, and I think partly it's because of that recognition of the consciousness and its contents are important, and these animals, we come from the same evolutionary line as these animals, and they must be capable of the very similar suffering.
That's right, they are. They don't have consciousness in the way they're not conscious of being conscious. They can't think about themselves, but they're certainly conscious of feeling pain. There's no question about that. So absolutely. But, so I think what we have to do, and I mean, the people like you is terrific, because you're bringing these conversations into the world, and you're saying, look, yes, the world is a tricky place. Brains are very, very tricky. Humans are potentially very nasty. No question about that. We're not naive. We've had horrible slaveries, we've had horrible tortures, we've had the Roman games, we've had the Holocaust, ethnic cleansing after ethnic cleansing, war after war after war. We know that. But we also have these other potentials, these compassionate potentials, that if we can take the courage and the wisdom, it will change the world. But we've got our work cut out for us. We've got a lot to do.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And I think what I'm loving so much about the work that you're doing is that it's such a bottom-up approach to get into these bigger social problems. I mean, just starting with training the mind is such it's so significant for the person who is suffering to be able to shift the dial on their consciousness.
Yes.
And it's able to have this compounding effect if enough people are on board. So I feel very grateful for the work you're doing, and
very welcome.
And I want to ask if there's any specific sites or institutes or books of yours that you would like to recommend to the audience.
Yes, well, there's a few. You can go onto the website and do the practices. I mean, one lovely practice which is the creating the friendly face. So when you walk down the street or whatever, just be aware that all the people around you, it's a bit grim, they won't be here in 100 years, because they're all on the same journey that you. They come into existence, they try their stuff, they want to be happy, they want to have children, they want to live a life, blah, blah. They're all exactly the same as you, right? So why not then just give them a little smile, show that you are friendly, create a sense of safeness. You are a friendly, safe person. There's no need for them to be anxious about you. A friendly, safe person. Give them a smile and see if they smile back to you. Because if they do, you've given them a little buzz of dopamine. Okay. So my wife and I, we used to have a competition many years ago, walking by a river. There's this lovely river. And we used to just smile at people coming the other way, because it was Sunday walk, and we'd smile at them or flash an eyebrow and just nod, and we'd see how many people would say good morning or hi or just say something. We'd have a little competition. But if they do, if you can just nod at them or smile hi or good morning, whatever it is, and they respond to you, they've had a little positive experience, just small, but you've created a little positive experience in that mind, right? So can you imagine if we all did that? If when you got on the tube or you're on a bus, everybody just looked at you in a very friendly way, and you felt quite secure and supported and belonging, sense of belonging. Can you imagine what that would be like? Created cities where everybody just had a sense of being very friendly and sense of connectedness.
And the compounded effect is so large, but the effort and the buy-in that you need is so little. I mean, it's just
Yes.
the energy that it takes to move these few muscles
Yes.
and the
Yes.
um,
Exactly. Exactly. And
yeah.
what you'll find is that when you do that, you yourself will start feeling better. You will yourself start feeling that you are a friendly person. I'm basically a friendly person. And you
Mhm.
begin to experience yourself. That's what I am. I'm basically a friendly person. I'm not a person who wants to go around and frighten people or threaten people or be fierce or any of that stuff. So that's key. That's really quite key. And you begin to experience your way. That's how you want to be experienced in the world, right? I want to be experienced by others as friendly and safe, and make their short journey on this life a little bit easier rather than more difficult.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's so relevant to this channel because this channel is all about teaching people, how or exploring the question what it means to be your own therapist. And I guess when you start to do that, you become a healing space for others. Like this, I mean,
yes,
from what you're saying, the just centering yourself on this compassionate motive, it sounds to me like it doesn't just help you, but it creates a space for others to it feels healing almost, or yeah, I don't know what the right term is. Mm,
yes. Yes,
yeah.
it is healing. So when you're being your self-therapist, for those of you who are wanting to be a self-therapist, start with where you are, right? So start with the fact you are a biological being. You, me, Nevern, all of us, we're just being built by our genes. We didn't build
Mm,
this, right? Every morning you have to get out, you have to eat something, you have to have a shit. You didn't design that. You didn't design your capacities for anger and anxiety or depression or whatever you're struggling with. It's not your fault. But it's like driving a car, right? You gotta learn how to drive it. Otherwise, it can drive you nuts. Okay. Through no fault of your own. So firstly, never blame yourself for what's going on inside of you. Then you can stand back and say, okay, but if I was at my compassionate best and wisest, how would I like to be? How would I like to be? And although it's an effort, you keep moving towards how you would like to be. Create images in your mind of how you would like to be. Think of situations you find difficult, like maybe if you're going to take exams, and then create an image of your mind. How would I like to be? Now, don't create a mind where I want to be without anxiety, because that isn't going to work. I'd like to be somebody that can cope with anxiety. So just imagine yourself there doing your exams. You're feeling very anxious, but you're saying to yourself, I'm okay. I can be anxious. That's just my brain playing, it's not very nice, but it's not my fault. I'm just going to do the best I can or whatever. So what you do is you start with this wisdom that we've all just found ourselves here. We've got these brains, all humans have more or less the same sort of issues. But if we become mindful, become aware, and make a choice not to attack ourselves, never do that because you don't want to be at war with yourself, but just as best you can, try to move towards being the best you can. That's it. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't. I can remember, just to finish on this, I do my little exercises and stuff like that. And then I'd go off to work and I'd be driving in traffic, and then people would start cutting me up, and you'd immediately think, oh, you bastard, what are you driving like that for? You little shit. But the point about it is just to be aware that that's what your brain does. It's only, and so then you have to pull back and just smile at yourself a little bit. So
mhm.
you will lose it from time to time, of course you will. But if you just practice noticing and just being aware and just allowing yourself to settle, what you'll do over a period of time, you'll notice that you'll settle much quicker. You'll start settling much quicker. You might get a flash of anger or anxiety, but you'll be able to settle your mind because you'll just be very friendly, gentle with it. Look, not your fault. This is the anger system. It's just gone off. It's just doing its own.
Yeah.
Attack yourself for it or whatever. So I hope that's helpful anyway.
Yeah, no, that's extremely helpful. I'm sure the listeners have got, lots of different practicable, like actionable things that they can do. I love how actionable all of these things are. Just smiling,
Yeah,
just noticing, just breathing slower. It's so modest, yet it could, has so much potential.
yeah. There's lots of practices. Go to resources on the website under
Okay.
resources and look for the practices and the videos and stuff. Lots of practices you can you could practice if you want, and breathing practices, and how to create a compassionate mind, how to deal with self-criticism.
Okay, great. I'll link that below for those listening as well, so you can get there.
Perfect.
Paul, thank you so much for all your wisdom, all your work as well. I really love what you do. So, and I appreciate you being so charitable with your time. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Well, you're putting that out there, so I'm just chatting away.
Great. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Take care now.
You too. Bye.